I think we all know that the initial sketch helps us to better understand our subjects, especially if it's before we're going to paint. But a lot of times I feel I'm seeing the students do some sketches, but it's like they're almost, I get the sense and I can't see them working. When I have a live workshop, I used to be able to see how students were working and developing a painting, and I can't see it, but it just appears, Casey, that it's a little bit too nonchalant, too almost like let's quick get it done so I can get onto the painting, and not really grasping the concept that the sketch is a way of learning more about the subject that we may want to paint. So let's look at a number of different sketches from some different artists. This is Joaquín Sorolla. And some artists paint their initial sketches or their ideas relatively small. Joaquín Sorolla went out on location and took some pretty large canvases. I mean, some of them were very huge, sometimes 6 feet by 5 feet or more, building an elaborate setup to hold the canvas outdoors. This one I know wasn't quite that size, but a lot of times in today's world, artists will do a smaller sketch and then come back and then do a larger studio painting. I kind of work that way. I have taken some larger canvases out on location, but it's a hassle, and depending on where I'm going, it can be done. I just don't do it as often. I used to do a little bit more in my earlier years of plein air painting. I would take some bigger canvases out. I haven't done that for a while. I went on a trip over to China with a number of other artists from this country, and we worked with artists over in China also, and they wanted us to paint larger pieces on location. I think the largest that we painted on location was 24 by 30, alla prima on location, and I think the smallest was 16 by 20 on that particular trip. So it was kind of fun to really work up some larger canvases than what I was used to painting 9 by 12s, 8 by 10s, 11 by 14s. 11 by 14 seemed to be my real comfortable size. I like that size. I know what I can get done in a certain time. When you're working on a larger canvas, like this particular canvas, when you look at it, it's a very simple composition. There's not a whole lot of finessing. There is definitely some perspective drawing to some of the steps and some of the mechanics of the, if you will, of some of the landscaping. And then you've got some of the shrubs that are landscaped, and then you've got some buildings in the background, and then you've got the organic element of the trees, which give this nice free-form feel in contrast to the more geometric shapes, the buildings and the steps. Very simply done, and there's probably more shadow shapes in the, whoops, I'm sorry about that. Why is this thing doing that? Every once in a while, it'll get on it's really a simplicity to all this. There's a little bit of light on the left side. You can see the light's coming from left to right, from the top, more lit on top. Sides are lit, sides are a little darker than the tops, and then you got a shadowed side and so forth. So it's very simply discovered in the landscape, and then actually painted that way too. A little bit more finessing with a little bit of it's an olive tree or something, then in kind of on the side here, but and all held with a real nice clean color for the sky. But in this case, instead of doing a smaller piece, he would do sometimes large paintings on location and not really going into a sketch. But he was very I mean, he worked with smaller sketches, and I'll show you some of the smaller ideas that he put together, and then probably worked up larger pieces. But to do something like this sometimes took numerous studies of different figures, and like all of us, sometimes working on one particular composition, then all of a sudden he gets another idea, and because of the previous one, he's got knowledge that he's gained that he can add into that second and third and fourth painting that might all derive from that initial study or composition that he worked up. These are, I had a chance to see it if anybody's gone to Madrid, to the Sorolla Museum over there, or if you've gone to the Hispanic Society north of well, it's kind of right on the edge of Harlem in New York City, and there's used to be, at least I haven't been there for a while, there was a display case that you couldn't touch the items, but they were smaller items like this particular one, a little study, and a lot of these studies were done on the lids of cigar boxes. Sorolla smoked cigars, as many people did back in that day. And so sometimes that nice rich wood in the cigar box became a nice background for him to paint some of his ideas. A sketch, a painted sketch. And from some of these little painted sketches, he may have gotten ideas, maybe he did this right on location, more than likely, right on location. And from that, maybe he said, well, maybe I'll do this and I'll set this up with some models and I'll rearrange. But it's that beginning idea that the sketch validates and offers for yourself or others to see in a visual form. No detail. You can see pretty much where maybe an ear was on this particular guy, and a face and a nose, but there's no detail in some of these. They're just quickly done just to get the idea down. Here's the one that I used for a title slide. Wonderful sense of sunlight on these boats that he used to paint along the shoreline, and when some of the fishermen would come up or get ready to go out. And here he's got some figures in the boat, water in the background. And it's all there. If you squint down, you even see it better. And figure this thing is a small little cigar box, maybe only maybe 8 inches by 9 inches, maybe 8 by 10 at the biggest. Really a great way to capture that initial idea. Drawing is still there, but he just didn't get into all the nuances, for instance, in the figure, but you can kind of get a sense that there's figures there. The proportions are right. They're in the location that you wouldn't mistake them for cattle or goods in the boat. You can kind of see that they're figures without having to paint them, all in full-fledged. He would also do lots of, for his bigger paintings, he did a whole series of paintings on the history of Spain, big murals. And sometimes for those murals, he would do numerous sketches of some of his models to get an idea of the attitude and the light effect and maybe the costuming. In this case, it's more probably studying the light effect and the subtle light in the shadow, the subtle form in the shadow yet. Where the light, even though the you see the light then forces you sometimes to see the shadow part, which is more of the interesting part of the portrait. Now, if the light would have been shining up and hitting on his face over here, then it'll be the interesting part of the face. Your eye probably would have gone to that immediately. But here your eye goes to this for the color, and then secondary it goes to the area where you do have the sharpest edge and the hardest line and the most contrast. But that color can be very, very inviting also. Here's one of his smaller sketches for some of the numerous paintings that he did of mothers bringing their children down to the ocean and the innocence of a little child, nude, if you will, and just enjoying the water and the swimming and maybe just maybe they did that also for a sense of bathing and keeping themselves hygienically clean. But a lot of wonderful study and to get a sense of this little girl bent over at the waist and her legs going down and a little bit of the buttocks here and you don't even have to have an arm. You get a sense of where that arm is going and with this one here, probably holding her little dress or her skirt together so it doesn't get too wet. But really a nice way to get an idea down